Select character screen. Press X to continue. Select character screen. Press X to select Kaito Onigiri. Loading. Please wait. Loading. Please wait. For text chat with other players, press left on the directional pad to open chat. Type message then press X to send chat. For proximity voice chat with other players, press and hold left on the directional pad while speaking. Purulent says, no con unless tank. Icon breath 3 says, till I get comfy. Italy says, LF fresh won't need rend slash SNS. Bleed. Skewer. Evade. 6/10. Purulent says, but yeah, as learning it's okay to have some. Italy says, LF fresh won't need rend slash SNS. Bleed. Skewer. Evade. 6/10. Nico 2.0 says, LFM fresh hive 1 rend 1 SNS link here DM 7/10. DESUGANGG says, Sage divide M3 need DPS. Nico 2.0 says, LFM fresh hive 1 heal 1 rend 1 SNS link here DM 7/10. Chase M101 says, my first run was 100 con at least cause I still didn't know SHT. Kali says, LF fresh board need rend slash SNS. Bleed. Skewer. Evade. 6/10. Kali says, LF fresh board need rend slash SNS. Bleed. Skewer. Evade. 6/10. KAL Castle says, KAL Castle waves. Nico 2.0 says, LFM fresh hive 1 heal 1 rend 1 SNS link here DM 7/10. Evervale says, export finisher. Popo Dude says, I need about 10k star metal ore, but I'm not paying these prices. Chase M101 says, well start farming. Nico 2.0 says, LFM fresh hive 1 heal 1 rend 1 SNS link here DM 7/10. Icon breath 3 says, stretch first, then farm. F4 thin says, hot. Icon breath 3 says, hot. Hobo Dude says, nothing OT farm. Kali says, LF fresh board need rend slash SNS. Bleed. Skewer. Evade. 7/10. Chase M101 says, get out that music playlist and start a path. Kali says, LF Freshboard need rend slash SNS. Bleed. Skewer. Evade. 7/10. I can correct 3 says, come FFA, I won't kill you XDD. Rabbito Harmy says, easy gamer right there, wants everything handed to him. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Heal 1 Rend 1 SNS Link Gear DM 7/10. Nogamenolov says, XWT. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Heal 1 Rend 1 SNS Link Gear DM 7/10. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Heal 1 Rend 1 SNS Link Gear DM 7/10. PG Water says, what did I miss? Bearing says, eh. Hobo Dude says, the prices are too high for raw mats. That is what you missed. Kali says, LF Freshboard need heal bleed. Skewer. Evade. 7/10. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Heal 1 Rend 1 SNS Link Gear DM 7/10. Kali says, LF Freshboard need heal bleed. Skewer. Evade. 7/10. AOSCO says, healer need con? Beanie Ben says, too damn high. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Rend 1 SNS Link Gear DM 8/10. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Rend 1 SNS Link Gear DM 8/10. Chase M101 says, I say healer need con cause healer need to stay alive. Kali says, LF Freshboard need heal bleed. Skewer. Evade. 7/10. Chase M101 says, cause who knows what SHT DPS or the healer gon get into. Kali says, LF Freshboard need heal bleed. Skewer. Evade. 7/10. AOSCO says, that's what I'm thinking. Philina says, Night Veil weapon pattern. Chase M101 says, plus, you can't heal if you dead. Joy says, X. PG Water says, am I hallucinating? Everfail says, X-board finisher. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Rend slash Skewer Link Gear DM 9/10. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Rend slash Skewer Link Gear DM 9/10. Rishiyo says, S. Warvolt says, can anyone help with Scorpio? Beanie Ben says, nah, you got a concussion from the guy that killed you. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Rend slash Skewer Link Gear DM 9/10. Joy says, LF Suppies 15/20. Warvolt says, I need Scorpio for musket. Keisha08 says, X Suppies. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Rend slash Skewer Link Gear DM 9/10. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Ren / Skewer Link Gear DM 910s. Evervale says, Export Finisher. PG Weather says, X Hive. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Ren / Skewer Link Gear DM 910s. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Ren / Skewer Link Gear DM 910s. Nogamenolith says, XWT. Joy says, LF Suppies 1520s. Joy says, LF Suppies 1520s. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Ren / Skewer Link Gear DM 910s. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Ren / Skewer Link Gear DM 910s. Joy says, LF Suppies Farm Infused Armor Scraps Infused Arcane Scraps Infused Weapon Scraps Dark Matter 1820ths R1 R2 Come. Alizar says, X Suppies. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Ren / Skewer Link Gear DM 910s. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Ren / Skewer Link Gear DM 910s. Jayswood 925 says, X Suppies. Jackbro20 says, 1. Javier says, X Sadish. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Rend / Skewer Link Gear DM 9/10. Nico 2.0 says, LFM Fresh Hive 1 Rend / Skewer Link Gear DM 9/10. Joy says, LF Suppy's Farm Infused Armor Scraps Dark Matter Infused Arcane Scraps Infused Weapon Scraps 18/20ths R1 Make to Raid R2 2/20ths come. Alizar says, WTS Gorgon's Fire Staff 725, Keen, Alacridus Punishment, Keenly Jagged, PM. Okada Henry says, X Reagan Anik SMA. Evervale says, X-Board Finisher. West Aria says, D. Caramel Cowboy says, what to do first? Aoesco says, need 2 for the Deeps dungeon. Elmerix says, Gorgon's ring WTS. Ernst Diaquin says, 1. Gandalf's GTN paid says, Gandalf's GTN paid says. West Aria says, 1. Says, XWT. AOSCO says, need 2 for the dukes. Dubstel says, XWT. AOSCO says, need 2 for the dukes. Chase M101 says, 500G. Artemisia says, hey Chase. Chase M101 says, Arte. Flower Wooka says, Q random mud. Tanking for Heel says, surely some of you mutation gamers random K and M1. Tanking for Heel says, I need my tanker gold. Purulent says, I'll DPS. Jazania says, X Suffies. Fiji Water says, what did I miss? Gypsy says, Armor Matrix Honing Acid WTS. Kobe NW says, everything. Says, WTS Gorgon's Fire Staff 725, Keen, Alacritus Punishment, Keenly Jagged, PM. Artemisia says, Apex Gold Cursed Legards of the Soldier. Artemisia says, got these with doubloons. Artemisia says, gold cursed amulet. Artemisia says, and these but the earrings I won't wear. Gazael says, X suffix. Requiem says, 1. Jimmy says, Organs Ring WTS. Gypsy says, Armor Matrix Honing Acid WTS. Magnus Delamanti says, X Suffies. BLK Silver Rain says, GGS. AOSCO says, need one for the deep sporpits. Lily Phillips says, quick regular deaths, anyone help a fellow gamer out? Beanie Bench says, X Depths. Magnus Delamanti says, X Suffies. PG Water says, X Depths. Elizar says, WTS 125, King, Alacritus Punishment, Healing Jacket, yeah. No criminals, export DPS.
Welcome to the greatest kingdom on Aeternum. Well, the Regency. Strange. Have you come from the beach, then? We've had disturbing reports. Not just the self-proclaimed king squatting down there, but something even worse. It's true, then. God's ears. Why must every day bring such foul tidings? Greedy farmers. Oh, it never ends. And now they're corrupted, too. The worst part is that it's happening on the eve of the most fortuitous occasion Pride has known in 400 years. Why, nothing less thrilling true air. Sir Gawain is coming home after centuries to finally claim the throne of High King Artorius. Of course, however, Knight Regent Jin Jay is officially still in charge of our fair town. As a matter of fact, count from the beach. Don't feel you have to run, though. Just ashore is a Pridewen tradition. Free room and board at the Regent's Rise Inn. I just sent another newcomer from the beach that way. Shady sort. Couldn't take a word for anything, you might imagine. Sounds like a sailor's tongue, all right. Probably someone you shouldn't witnesses, you know. So again, welcome to Pridewen. At the MC for celebration.
Warning them is a futile effort to the real danger all around them.
If someone doesn't show up soon, the bushes are a minute or two.
FYK5 says, after 50%.
It's a long day.
Says, broadcast 5 DPS 1 you'll link all.
To the Regent here and wake up feeling like a king. You here to check in? Be my guest. Ooh, literally.
Frog LFM 5 DPS 1 he'll link all. N83 says,
Now there's a familiar spot up.
Says,
Here we find straight from the middle of the sea. Or does nothing on this island make any sense at all? No doubt. For a place where everyone gets eternal life, you'd think it'd be more calm, dull even.
Jibsk says,
Not saying I'd like that, mind you.
WTS.
One thing that is the same though is cold. Have it or you don't. Makes all the difference. We're both a little light in the pocket, but I did sell that loot we collected, so there's your share. Never like he said, Grace O'Malley doesn't pay her debts. Well, you got that coin I just gave you, so I'd suggest you get to spend a blade, some new boots, whatever suits your fancy.
says, Frog LFM 4 DPS 1 heal link all. Salty
Ah,
Beast
yeah,
says,
there's a trading
X
post
red
out there.
mugs.
Bigger market than I would have expected. You should check out the trading post in the storage. And then what do you say? Let's meet in the tavern. All right, see you there.
Grog LFM 4 DPS 1 heal link all.
You're in a new town. I get to spending it or stashing it myself.
Pan83 says, Grog LFM 4 DPS 1 heal link all the XP. Salty Zuffies. Mac Cockham says, Mac Cockham says, Regis Cone says, X Shodies. Says, How's it going? XD. Mac Cockham says, Chungus Fungus says at Mac Cockham carry me in Wormia. Pan83 says, Grog LFM 3 DPS 1 heal link all the X. Mrs. DPS1 heal link all EXP run. Loading. Please wait. Kobe NW says, D or SS, or craft a VG. G Iovine says, LOL. Mac Kokim says, New World has hundreds. Mac Kokim says, surprised face, dude. Gypsk says, Armor Matrix honing acid WTS. Mac Kokim says, X high. Kobe NW says, some people opt for the pure DPS over utility and go dig, which at that point IMO just craft a VG. Mac Kokim says, surprised face, I only PvE though. Pan83 says, Rock LFM1 DPS1 heal link all EXP run. Mac Kokim says, you can't? Kobe NW says, same logic applies. Andronic says, XWT. Old Man Jim says, not if it's a keep in your gear set, you have to take it all off from inventory, and also Mac Kokim says, I meant you can delete it right? Says, yeah, but it actually carries. Kobe NW says, heal with life staff, and rupture will provide all the self-heal your team needs. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS1 heal link all EXP run. Mrs. Dududu says, Void Gauntlet of the Scholar Armorer Shirt WTSPMO. Mac Kokim says, hesitant face. Mac Kokim says, I can't use it as DPS. Alizar says, WTS Gorgon's Fire Staff 725, Keen, Alacritus Punishment, Keenly Jagged, PM. Alizar says, WTS Gorgon's Fire Staff 725, Keen, Alacritus Punishment, Keenly Jagged, PM. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 heal link all EXP run. Alizar says, WTS Gorgon's Fire Staff 725, Keen, Alacritus Punishment, Keenly Jagged, PM. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 heal link all EXP run. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 heal link all EXP run. Fiji Water says, X Hive DPS. Kobe NW says, I don't get what you're asking me. PvEVG heals and does DPS. Mac Kokim says, XD if you can't get heal I could help. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 heal link all EXP run. Mac Kokim says, yeah VG so off. Fiji Water says, X Gorg Renbit. Mac Kokim says, just got friture and don't know what to do with it. Hanate3 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run. Kobe NW says, BG and LS is heal and DPS, I don't know what we're asking anymore. Mac Kakim says, nature DPS so low though. Kobe NW says, BG. Alizar says, WTS Gorgon's Fire Staff 725, Keen, Alacritus Punishment, Keenly Jagged, PM. Mac Kakim says, VG has good rend, laughing face. Hanate3 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run. Fiji Water says, X Gorg Renbit. Mbao says, any CK runs this M? Kobe NW says, good luck. Old Man Jim says, since Void Gauntlet is not elemental DMG I noticed, for my VG/LF character I should be pumping everything into focus and just enough so I get crit on int. Mac Kakim says, LFG any raid/trial/mutated enroll. Artemisia says, that's where reset ECR starts is at CK. Ronchia says, just came back from a break right before the Sandworm raid came out. What should I do? L4RACR0FT89 says, XECR. Mbao says, now's the time to form raids with the leaders. Mac Kakim says, yeah everyone's gonna do that on about 30 minutes. Andrinig says, XECR. Mac Kakim says, no fun boring time. Artemisia says, work on updating gear and weapons. Kobe NW says, VG is elemental damage, Void is ELE. Artemisia says, weapons asterisk. Beagles Carpathia says, where does the elite chest run at 5 start? Ronchia says, what's max level now? Dubs L says, XECR. Artemisia says, 65. Artemisia says, 725 GS. Mbao says, XECR. Sun Nadian says, XECR. Rinae says, X Suthies. Chase M101 says, still 65. Andrinig says, XECR. Mac Kakim says, still gonna be 65 though. Sir Garnet says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, XECR. Dubs L says, XECR. Kakiruk says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, starting at CK. Neakazu says, XECR. Andrinik says, XECR. Hanate3 says, Grog LFM1 you'll link all the XP run. PG Water says, X Gorg Renbit. Mac Kakim says, X Fun. Beagles Carpathia says, what is XECR? Silomai says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, is it starting at 5 at Creek? HEEM'd up says, GGS to the 2v1. Tubber says, XECR. Hanate3 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all the XP runs. Mrs. Dududu says, Armor Matrix Prismatic Scarab WTS. Alpersalam says, XECR. Which says, I can help you at MacCockhim. Which says, LOL. MacCockhim says, LFG any raid /trial /mutated enroll. Reaper says, CK Admiral's Shrine. MacCockhim says, we go in worm. L4RACR0FT89 says, XECR. Ron GS says, is there quests I should be doing if I just came back to the game? Or what is the content to start gearing up again? Setsuna Mayu says, XECR. Okita Henry says, Amreen in lobby. Fan83 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run. Nayake Aziyu says, XECR. Tara Abu says, XECR. Fan83 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run. Tara Abu says, X there. Beagles Carpathia says, where is the CR starting? MacCockhim says, mutated and raid is good start. Tara Abu says, X there. Alpersalam says, XECR. Felicity111 says, XECR. A0A says, XECR. Beagles Carpathia says, XECR. Galadriel says, XECR. Tubber says, XECR. Sandy Cervix says, XECR. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run. I can breath 3 says, buying green pigment 16 PCS. Kopana says, Tut. Artemisia says, I am not leading the run but I'll get it started. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run 8 DPS team. Sun Nadian says, CK Admiral ECR or WT. Artemisia says, CK will start at 5 AM PST reset, X art for CK raid. Mbao says, XCK. Shonup says, LF3 DPS1 heal for BBP M2. Aether JR says, X art. Artemisia says, CK equals Admiral's Shrine in Cutlass Keys. Shonup says, LF3 DPS1 heal for BBP M2. Setsuna Mayu says, X art. Sandy Cervix says, X art. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run 8 DPS team. Ron GS says, how do I tell what my gear score is? MacCockhim says, LFG any raid /trial /mutated enroll. Kobe NW says, Gorgon's Ring WTS. Chase M101 says at Ron GA go to inventory, it's the triple digit top left. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run 8 DPS team. Alizar says, WTS Gorgon's Fire Staff 725, Keen, Alacritus Punishment, Keenly Jagged, PM. Ajimen J says, XECR. Chase M101 says, sorry, it's the number above or weapon slots in your inventory. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 he'll link all EXP run 8 DPS team. Sun Nadian says, R2 1515s. Blue Sky says, XECR. Shonup says, LF2 DPS1 heal for BBP M2. Rhinea says, X Suffies. Sun Nadian says, R2 1520s. Artemisia says, I might have to start raid over. Artemisia says, it's glitching. Sam Gaming says, XECR. L4 JR0FT89 says, XECR. Setsuna Mayu says, okay. Artemisia says, okay X again. Shonup says, LF1 DPS1 heal for BBPM2. Sandy Cervix says, X art. Fiji Water says, XM2 DPS. Setsuna Mayu says, X art. Silomai says, XECR. Potsticker69 says, XECR. Shonup says, LF1 DPS1 heal for BBPM2. Uncle Drew says, anyone wanna join me for Siren? Han83 says, Grog LFM1 heal link all the XP run 8 DPS team. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 heal link all the XP run 8 DPS team. Tobert says, XECR. Ron GS says, is there a mount hotkey? Artemisia says, 6/20th Art CK raid. Uncle Drew says, Siren tuning orb anyone want to join? Chase M101 says, X default. Shonup says, X. Setsuna Mayu says, X for mount. Ilaru says, I haven't played in years, I don't know what I'm doing. BLK Silver Rain says, stupid ass people kick me for no reason, forget you losers. Blaze Chew says, XECR. Bluesky says, X Artem. Artemisia says, ck/my/cast/mine/wall/cast/helio/med/oof/addis/trip/isle. Chase M101 says, reminded that SHT2 instead of X. Shonup says, LF1 DPS1 heal for BBPM2. Waldsimers says, don't be sour. Davanesh says, X. Artemisia says, remember root, I won't be here to lead, just getting it started. Waldsimers says, mad cuz bad. Mac Cockham says, bad. Uncle Drew says, X up to join Siren tuning orb. Gafar says, X. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 heal link all the XP run 8 DPS team. Shonup says, LF1 DPS1 heal for BBPM2. Artemisia says, CK will start at 5 AM PST reset, so about 20 minutes. Veronite 28 says, with where Questo. Shonup says, LF1 DPS1 heal for BBPM2. Artemisia says, CK equals Admiral's Shrine in Cutlass Keys. Mac Cockham says, there. Setsuna Mayu says, just after my food arrives, yay. Waldsimers says, over there. Artemisia says, 9/20th Art CK raid. Titan Samurai says, X. Artemisia says, nice. Sun Nadian says, R218/20th. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBPM2. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBPM2. JOP1 says, X heart. Waldsimers says, oh wait for wit, I know where actually. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBPM2. Sestro says, X-rays. Artemisia says, JOKI. Chase M101 says at Veronite 28 if you inspect your map, it'll have quest markers for that artifact depending on the mission hashtag. Aether JR says, X art. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all the XP run. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all the XP run. Chase M101 says, as for exactly where it is, I forget. Bluesky says, no potion. Veron28 says, I don't know P. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Zane says, X high. Andronik says, Oak. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all the XP run. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Baltzheimer's says, 5k gold I'll bring you there. Uncle Drew says, Siren tuning orb X up. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all the XP run. Veronite28 says, 10k. Artemisia says, 11/20th CK art raid. Lazaipa says, XECR. Either JR says, XECR. Old Man Jim says, oh but Maka what are you doing for your second gear set if I may ask? Sleeby Lena says, XECR. Bluesky says, 2-1. Wolfafeng says, XECR. Sun Nadian says, gathering ECR or WTCK Admiral R2 18/20ths. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Veronite28 says, no. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Veronite28 says, I need Hasida and where spot farm Hasida. Jiva says, Morgan's earring fortifying toes, regenerating, despised GS 725 WTS. Either JR says, XECR. Bluesky says, 2-2. Mbo says, X up for ECR. Gaffar says, XECR. Laura JGC says, XECR. Uncle Drew says, DM me LF healer and DPS siren tuning orb. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Smoopy says, gamble. Bosco Jenkins says, to be clear, this ECR raid is starting at 5 AM, beginning at CK via the Admiral's Shrine. A0A says, XECR. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Benny Grapple says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, we are gathering at full patch cover and waiting. Dark Psycho says, XECR. Lablotterts says, XECR. Either JR says, XECR. Tara Abu says, XSIR. Big Foodie says, XECR \. Tara Abu says, XSIR. Tara Abu says, XSIR. Tara Abu says, XSIR. Yank Meat says, Cutlass run happen already. Mbo says, Raid 1 is full start another. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Uncle Drew says, LF DPS and healer siren tuning orb. Yank Meat says, NVM. Bluesky says, Artemisia says, R1 full. Sun Nadian says, full R2 20/20th ECR or WT. Smoopy says, Gamble Delta. Lablotterts says, XECR. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Sun Nadian says, build or make group raid again guys. Dice to Death 3ND says, Sun Nadian says, for our 3 kits. Either JR says, XECR. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Lablotterts says, XECR. Bluesky says, X love. Rayon says, XECR. JJNX says, XECR. Ajaman J says, XECR. Amuran says, Amurant third waves. Amurant third says, Amurant third waves. Lavlottard says, XECR. Amurant third says, Amurant third waves. Lockman says, XECR. Amurant third says, Amurant third gives the thumbs up. L Lookater says, XECR. Amurant third says, Amurant third gives the thumbs up. Amurant third says, Amurant third gets frustrated. Amurant third says, Amurant third dances. Scrotius Rex says, XCK. Shonup says, LF1 heal for BBP M2. Keisha08 says, XECR. Andriella says, anyone wanna run AM3? I can heal or DPS. Ajamen J says, XECR. Hakim says, Greens 1. Amurant third says, Amurant third waves. Lavlottard says, XX. Keisha08 says, XECR. Lockery says, XECR. Kageyama99 says, XECR. Smudge Underfoot says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, ECR raid, starting at CK, multiple raids are setting up to farming area, starting at 5 AM. We are grouped together here at the location, waiting till the start time. Lavlottard says, XECR. Sweaty Asta says, INVECR. Aether JR says, XECR. Lazipa says, XECR. Shonup says, once I get to the M3 for BBP I will, but got to get there first. You want to heal for the M2 BBP. Lavlottard says, please R3. Sundoc says, XECR. Amurant third says, Amurant third waves. Amurant third says, Amurant third waves. Bosco Jenkins says, I'll make another R. Kaipai Use says, X heal M2. Lazipa says, XECRCK. L Lookater says, XECR. Sweaty Asta says, X. Keisha08 says, Zekr. Fiji Water says, X or Grenbit. Chase M101 says, XECR. Thungtung Zheng says, XECR. Sun Nadian says, Gate Ring ECR R1 R2 R3 ready. Keisha08 says, XECR. Aether JR says, XECR. Sonic Wind says, XECR. Smudge Underfoot says, XECR. Blockley says, XECR. John Dar says, XECR. Thungtung Zheng says, XECR. Keisha08 says, XECR. Aether JR says, XECR. Dice of Death 3ND says, XECR hee. Baby Turkey says, XECR. Axel GNR says, XECR. Shizu says, XECR. Thrashert says, X expendable WT. Bosco Jenkins says, ECRR 3/12/20ths, starting at 5 AM at CK. Smudge Underfoot says, XECRPLS. Tenacity says, XECRLFGGG. Uzub says, I'm a cannon fodder, so can I join the fun too? Dollyman says, XECR. Nikits says, X. Chwaduk says, XECR. Sun Nadian says, PLS looking for ECR with at Bosco Jenkins R3. Smudge Underfoot says, Tie. Cap Kabi says, XECR. Monahose says, XECR. Dollyman says, XECRR3. Shoyo says, XECR. Calmeed says, XECR. Vingstzoe says, XECR. Shoyo says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, R3 full, please make R4. Nuris says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, I guess I can make R4 LOL. Rock Solo says, Kobo. Nuris says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, okay, I left R3, made R4, who wants in? Lang says, XECR. Monahose says, XECR. Nui Champuk says, XECR. Company member says, XECR. Lazaipa says, ECR channel. Olympus Slayer says, XECR. Nugnugnugobib says, XECR. Vingstzoe says, XECR. Company member says, XECR. Scrotius Rex says, XECR. Ashley says, XECR. Martis says, XECR. Israel Wolf says, don't know if my message went through. Cap Kabi says, XECR. Ashley says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, ECRR for 10/20ths, starting at 5 AM from CK. Holidato says, X at Bosco Jenkins. Dice of Dash 3 ND says, LMFAO. Sesto says, X Scorp. Black Soldier says, XECR. Willa says, XECR. Ashley says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, starting in 5 minutes 14/20ths. Sweaty Asta says, it's not letting me fast travel, anyone know the fix? Shoyo says, XECR. Screw says, XECR. Nogamenolip says, XWT. Calmeed says, XECR. NASWA says, XWT. Synaptic says, Asta go to main menu and come back. Kobe NW says, do you have enough as off? Sestro says, X Scorp. Sweaty Asta says, yeah, I'm maxed. Peko63 says, X Scorp. Sweaty Asta says, Il Reset. Philana says, Harvester Shirt. Uncle Drew says, X Syro. NASWA says, XECR. Kageyama99 says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, ECRR for 17/20ths, starting at 5 AM PST from CK. Jim Rayner says, XECR. Nogamenolip says, XWT. Calmeed says, XECR. NASWA says, XECR. Lilith Whoop says, anyone willing to help me complete Garden of Genesis expedition? Call Mead says, XECR. Nogamenolith says, XCK. Ace Real Wolf says, I'ma bet you're not on a teleporter / outpost / settlement. Kobe NW says, 1. H1 the says, X High Healer. Jahun says, X Genesis. Snora Joy says, 1. Putri Arida says, XECR. Smission Group says, ZECR. Sestro says, X Scorp. Bosco Jenkins says, R4 full. Sanskira says, XECR. Alizar says, WTS Gorgon's Fire Staff 725, Keen, Alacritus Punishment, Keenly Jagged, PM. Jiva says, Gorgon's Earring Fortifying Toast, Regenerating, Despised GS 725 WTS. Bosco Jenkins says, it's time. Lazaipa says, Gago. Anjani Ul says, R5 820s. Migranias says, XECR. An influence race has been scheduled in Monarch's Bluffs. Lilith Whoop says, Garden of Genesis EXP Expedition 2/5 Help PLS. Zhao Huan says, XECR. Sidolpha Sapphire says, XECR. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all EXP run. Dilmarat says, XECR. Lanny says, XECR. Zaxby says, Gorgon's Rapier WTS. BIAO 2.0 says, 1. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all EXP run boss 1. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all EXP run boss 1. Migranias says, it already started. Anjani Ul says, 12/20ths. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all EXP run boss 1. Uncle Drew says, X up for Scorp. Han83 says, Grog LFM1 DPS link all EXP run boss 1. Julie Brown says, XECR. Jaragan Engine says, X or DPS. Sweaty Asta says, what I still can't even after resetting. Zane says, selling worm clears, DM. Zane says, selling worm clears, DM. Emil says, is flail or sword better for tanking? SVXSSS says, 121. Lilith says, anybody willing to help me complete Garden of Genesis Expedition 2/5 PLS Hell? SVXSSS says, 112. Jahun says, anyone willing to help low level for Reg Genesis? Nokomenolix says, XCK. Jahun says, it's gonna be a speed run. Kinlamu says, LF run GORGEXP heal /tank /DPSDM link gear. Zane says, selling worm clears, DM. Dungtoon Sheng says, XECR. Anastasia K says, 1. Arish Vale says, 1. Sestro says, stack deck loaded dice prismatic scarab glowing sap X3 precision armoring tools X2 WTS. Noxamaset says, XECR. GGC Snowden says, WTS Totem. Sestro says, glowing sap X3 WTS. Anjani Ul says, ECRR 517/20ths. Zika says, XECR. Cap Kabi says, XECR. Galadriel says, XECR. Maria Vania says, XECR. Jahun says, anyone willing to run a Reg Genesis to help a low level? Gios LOL says, XECR. Anjani Ul says, R5 full. Sir Nathan says, XECR. Kinlamu says, LF run GORGEXP heal /tank /DPSDM link gear 310s. Sir Nathan says, XECR. Gios LOL says, XECR. Boberton says, Medley Bear Token. Sir Nathan says, XECR. Gios LOL says, XCR. Gios LOL says, XECR. Eiling says, XECR. Cartel London says, XECR. Nico 2.0 says, LFMSNS/evade for Hive 2 end boss. Cartel London says, XECR. Nico 2.0 says, LFMSNS/evade for Hive second boss. Eiling says, where is ECR at now? Nico 2.0 says, LFMSNS/evade for Hive second boss. Eiling says, XECR. Nico 2.0 says, LFMSNS/evade for Hive second boss link gear DM. Nico 2.0 says, LFMSNS/evade for Hive second boss link gear DM. Werda says, XECR. PRON says, XECR. Old Man Jim says, venting. Yamil says, SUS. Cartel London says, XECR. Liebman says, L. Missler says, Farm X Shodies up 15/20ths. Migranias says, X Suffies. Miss Laura says, Farm X Shodies up 15/20ths. PRON says, no ECR? Demon Hunter Rumi says, ECR starts at 5 bud. Olympus Slayer says, it's happening. Demon Hunter Rumi says, they're busy running and not typing. Baby Turkey says, hey. PRON says, ah. Baronite28 says, what is Shodius? Sir Nathan says, except Arte LMAO. The plug says, X Eben Portals. Setsuna Mime says, hard to type and follow the ant trail. Agas says, WTB Light 700 GS Enchanted Ward shirt. Demon Hunter Rumi says, ESP if you're new to ECR. Setsuna Mime says, yeah I still learning. Demon Hunter Rumi says, my first one was very interesting.
I've met stately noble gentry and shipwrecked men of 20. I've met souls from ancient memory, found in sagas and dusty tomes. I've seen ghosts and fiends and horrors, met knights and bold explorers, as I've wandered every corner of this island we call home. Let's go! Keep it together! Yes! Dig in! Woo! Kings of earthly nations, seen the gods of all creations, tasted wine at every station, from sands to misty moors. But the partings that we weather and the memories we treasure are the souls we've lost forever on Aeternum's forgotten shore.
The plug says, who needs help W anything any news? Uncle Drew says, X. Tanking Fertile says, I'll buy those Gorgier rings for 5k. All I can
Lively
offer.
little ditty there. Kinda oversells the
Thanking
place,
Fertile
don't you
says,
think? I sure
smiley
won't be
face.
calling this place home. But hey, aren't you popular? Messenger from the Night Regent herself was looking for you. Getting fancy, aren't we? She's keen to have a word with you up at the keep.
Miss Laura says, Farm X Shodies drop infused armor scraps, infused jewelry scraps, infused art.
Word around
scraps,
town
infused
says the Night
engineering
Regent's
scraps,
just a
infused
puppet,
weapon
and
scraps,
some
valuable
minister
weapon
Lochner is
scraps,
actually
jewelry
running
scraps,
things.
15/20.
And then this true air business. You think that's what drew the crowds? But Barkeep says it's really just people fleeing from trouble at the outlying farms. Sounds like some kind of plague. People turning on their friends and neighbours with cold murder in their eyes. Unlike those red-eyed bastards on the beach, these
Tyler
folks
LD
aren't
says,
possessed.
Ex-Suppies.
Seems like they don't have any souls at all.
Says, Ex-Suppies.
I didn't trust all the shite coming out of that oaf's mouth. But maybe there was some truth to it. I'd be more interested to hear what the Night Regent has to say, particularly if there's mention of coin. I'm right here if you need me.
57 Hippo says, X Suffies. 57 Hippo says, X Suffies.
Apparently that night, Sir Payne,
Broccoli says,
he's about 500 years old.
Setsuna
I guess
Maya
that explains why he's such an
says, I don't know
uptight
how
bastard.
RK can type and run. It's a skill. I lost half the answer
Apparently
when I
that
stopped
night.
to talk.
What'll it be, friend? A drink to wash away your sorrows, or a drink to celebrate the gift of life? There's always a good reason to knock one
Cowboy
back, if
says,
you ask me.
X Suffies. Never done it before. Sir Nathan says,
What'll it
he
be,
had a
friend?
six-hand.
A drink to wash away your
Miss
sorrows,
Laura
or
says,
a drink to
Farm X
celebrate the
Showbiz
gift
drop
of
infused
life?
Armor scraps, infused jewelry scraps, infused scraps, infused engineering scraps, infused weapon scraps, valuable weapon scraps, jewelry scraps, 18/20ths. Della Rosa says, X Suffies.
It's a lovely walk.
Says,
Am I finally
X
to meet a
Suffies.
muse sent by the ancients themselves to
Jenkins
inspire
says,
me?
R4. Bosco Jenkins says, 19/20ths.
Here comes a lovely.
Marcia Putri says, X Suffies.
Came here from the north, believing this
London
place
says,
would be better.
XECR.
Instead, I found the den of snakes. A stranger promised me shelter in exchange for information about night. He did the unspeakable. Everyone's going to turn lost soon. There's nothing anyone can do about it.
M. Bob says, THX for the CK run carry on people. Miss Laura says, R1 full make R2 please. Ader JR says, MYRK. Lab Loddard says, next. Bosco Jenkins says, wait for MYRK. Baby Turkey says at Blue Sky hi there carrot. Bosco Jenkins says, MYRK is next, CK is almost done. Biggles Carpathia says, where? Bosco Jenkins says, we have like 100 people here. Setsuna Mayo says, we wait for MYRK. XCIEO says, schematic, Gorgonite longsword schematic, Gorgonite spear WTS Jeep and TP. Cube Jaw says, 20 minutes tank queue for random mutt. Yank Meat says, what shrine in MYRK? JJNX says, where we going? Bosco Jenkins says, MYRK. Setsuna Mayo says, Invitus Shrine. Kashukasuka says. Bosco Jenkins says, Invitus Shrine. Agas says, X for Grey Wizard hat challenges.
This island is filled with trials. So be prepared to learn who you really are.
Bosco Jenkins
Man
says,
is like
heading to
pepper.
first portal.
You only know him
Dionysus
when you've
says,
ground
X
him.
MYRK. Rax Max says, X show these. Bosco Jenkins says, MYRK started, Portal 1 now. says, XMYRK. Bosco Jenkins says, Portal 1 down. Inky85 says, XMYRK. Ms. Brios says, XMYRK. Setsuna Mayu says, I following the floating mic. LOL. Axon1 says, XMYRK. Zionisi says, XMYRK. SVXSSS says, X Gorgon. SVXSSS says, X Gorgon DPS heal tag. Says, X reef water portals. SVXSSS says, X Morgan DPS heal tag. Kinlamu says, LF run GORGEXP heal /tank /DPS DM link here 310s. Camille says, when does the mech appear? Nogametalum says, X-Org DPS ready. Camille says, ALR time. Bosco Jenkins says, is it mines or wall after MYRK? SVXSSS says, X-Org and DPS heal tag. Bosco says, now. Beat Gong says, X. Magnus Manti says, X. Magnus Manti says, X subbies. Chase M101 says, think it was mines after. Hoshi
The
Yomi
farmers
says,
tonight,
yes.
the miners, no word in days. We need to know what's going on out there, Locknear.
The people are simply distracted. Word has spread of the true heir's return. As acting regent, you have served Pride One faithfully, and I'm sure this is unsettling for you. But you can set aside your concerns.
When the new king is ready to assume his duties, I will gladly stand down. But not before.
Of course. Now, I have preparations to attend to.
Eco 2.0 says, LM tank for 5-second boss link here DM. Bosco Jenkins says, yep. Magnus Delamanti says, X subbies. August says, XWTV Dex light shirt with E-Ward. Joker Park says, X Gorgon DPS. SBXSSS says, LFM Gorgon DPS thank you link all. Nigranias says, XNYRC. Nigranias says, XNYRK. TTV Sapper says, XWT. SBXSSS says, LFM Gorgon DPS tank heal link all 3 tents EXP run. Sandwich Slayer says, X-Hope. Melvin66 says, X-Hope Coach SB. SBXSSS says, X. Kinlamu says, LF run GORGEXP/tank/DPSDN link gear 310s. MYK5 says, you really live in Hive Sandwich. Sandwich Slayer says, hi MYK, laughing face. MYK5 says, hi hot. Melvin66 says, XOPLS. Jahoon says, Hive Slayer. Snora Joy says, hi MYK, smiley face.
Ah, you must be the one from the beach. Selpain believes you to be honorable, and I trust his judgment. But I like to hear reports firsthand. We saw signs of corruption by the shore, but we believed it was isolated, and that no one had actually become corrupted. Did you see them yourself?
SBXSSS says, MYRK5 Gorgon.
That is not what I wanted to hear, but I see the sincerity in your eyes.
is currently underway.
You should know that we normally go to great lengths to make newcomers feel welcome in Pridewin. I'm sorry if I seem impatient just now.
Miss Laura says, Farm X Shoties drop infused armor scraps, infused jewelry scraps, infused arcane scraps,
with all the excitement for the return of the true heir, I believe we are ignoring signs of grave threats to Pridewin. And news of corrupted adds to the list. However, the greater concern right now is the rash of disappearances. Sworn knights who failed to report in over the last several weeks. Minister Lochner has sent scouts, but they have not returned as of yet. And now I feel they are missing as well. Still, I counsel patience. Lochner believes the return of the royal bloodline will solve all problems. I feel strongly that we cannot afford to wait for Gawain.
I'm Zephyr says, X Nasai Goran. Yamil
Oh,
says,
I'm
"It
sorry.
should yet."
This is poor
Thy
form on
final
my
link
part,
says,
dropping
"I'm
all my
still
troubles on
learning
your
this beyond
boots.
awesome game
I would
fee.
not impose on
Where
someone
do
who
I
just
spend my
arrived.
Azoth points?
Still,
Please.
with the remaining nights
Janet
spread
18
thin,
says,
you're
LOL.
probably able to get me answers faster than they
Miss Lauren
can.
says, Farm X Shodi's drop infused armor scraps
The mine
infused
is not
jewelry
so
scraps
far
infused
away
arcane
either.
scraps infused engineering scraps infused weapon scraps valuable weapon
That's
scraps
just
jewelry
it.
scraps
We don't
1920s.
know. The foreman there, Alia
Caleb
Musa,
says,
is a personal
Exlo
friend,
CEO.
and she usually visits once a week.
Caramel says,
But it's been a month.
ECR mooring rush in 2
If you're
minutes.
truly willing, I would ask you to check
Benjamin
on
says,
Foreman Musa and report
MYRK,
back.
Mines,
Oh,
water,
and
get
please
slash
inform
email,
Minister Lochner
cast,
of your mission,
bed,
just
atta,
so he's
imp,
aware.
Trib, Eiley. I'm Zephyr says, CAO. Dornalen says, CAO. Rockies says, XMYRK.
Foreman Musa usually
Alligator
sends
says,
regular status
"Yet."
reports. I hope
Bosco
all is well,
Jenkins says,
but we
"Mines
need
is
to be
after
certain.
MYRK, currently at Portal 3. Massive ECR.
Foreman
Elite
Musa
Test Run.
usually sends regular
Meeting at
status
Alazer's
reports.
recall for the mines. Duxiayu says, 1. Miss Laru says, Farm X Shodi's drop infused armor scraps infused jewelry scraps infused arcane scraps infused engineering scraps infused weapon scraps valuable weapon scraps jewelry scraps 1820s. Felderus says, 1. Forwich Ferry says, X Suthu. Rockley says, X Suthies. Thy final link says, Whisper me PLS, I don't remean because I suffer with a traumatic brain injury, I'm on my 14th beyond blessable life. Zenmonk says, XECR. Rockies says, XMYRK. Bosco Jenkins says, we are split between 2 portals. Duxiayu says, X. 1EEE says, XMYRK. Yulukat says, 1. X Lugenipolex says, X Lugenipolex dances. X Lugenipolex says, X Lugenipolex sits. Bosco Jenkins says, Portal 3 and 4 now closed, moving to final portal and final chests, then onto mines. X Lugenipolex says, X Lugenipolex waves. Lunarius says, help. Lunarius says, LOL. Lunarius says, oops. Liego says, Atta ECR? X Atta. Bosco Jenkins says, a new raid probably needs to be made. Chase M101 says, down the line, we about to finish MYRK mines. Liego says, R. Rocky says, XCR. Fury says, what is the best way to get PvP XP for traps? Bernias says, what's the name of the spirit shrine for mines? Gios LOL says, Gios LOL says, XTCR. Nazu says, XTCR. Bosco Jenkins says, I'll make our fight. What? CCR. Plug said, on V me. Fury said, OPR is fun, but doesn't seem like efficient XP due to duration. Bosco Jenkins says, no. Sir Garnet says, SM101 says, Shrine. Anjani Ul says,
Yes, the newcomer invited to an audience with the Night Regent. Imagine, if you had arrived 2 days later, you might have been welcomed by a king. Yes, Gawain's return will restore Prydwen's glory. The Night Regent has performed well with my counsel, but she sometimes exceeds her mandate.
Eiling says, XECR.
For now. But she would do well not matters our new king can better adjudicate. Tell me, has she enlisted you in one of her endeavors?
Bosco Jenkins says, mines.
Well, aren't we proof?
LOLOK.
I'm sure the king will also be grateful for those who willingly submit to his guidance. It's not my place to countermand the Night Regent's orders, but I would hate to see a prospective resident waste their time. The tavern is open, you know.
Says, LFM tank for evade second. DM. Nate says, XECR. Hobo Dude says, LMFAO.
Prydwen is a town unlike any other. Here, we honor the traditions from the reign. I take personal interest in ensuring that.
Says, why Great Cleve and not some other zone? Demon Hunter Rumi says, they are very closely clustered. Tyla Le says, it's the same 3 quests every time, can complete every 5 minutes. Bosco Jenkins says, ECRR 6520s. Tyla Le says, yes. Says, it takes like 5 minutes to do all 3. SBXSSS says, 1121. Hobo Dude says, you will be there all day, and get nothing. Without me, first boss. Mercury says, okay, makes sense. I'm Zephyr says, WTV Chef's shirt. Andrina DR. Nico 2.0 says, LFM tank for evade second boss link gear DM. Nogamenolith says, XWT. Joker Park says, XIPS. Joker Park says, 1. Felicity 111 says, XECR. Missler says, Farm X Shoties drop infused armor scraps, infused jewelry scraps, infused arcane scraps, infused engineering scraps, infused weapon scraps, valuable weapon scraps, jewelry scraps 18/20ths. Hobo Dude says, I'm going to boycott you, so I never group with you in your lanes again. Pick more players. Chase M101 says, tank with the base. Nico 2.0 says, LFM tank for 2 evade second boss link gear DM. Shizu says, XECR. Nico 2.0 says, LFM tank for 2 evade second boss link gear DM. Bosco Jenkins says, massive 100 plus player ECR heading to mines soon, R6620s. Bosco Jenkins says, massive 100 plus player ECR heading to mines soon, R6620s. Tyla Le says, major loot luck trophy WTSPMO. Action 1 says, XECR. Missler says, Farm X Shoties drop infused armor scraps, infused jewelry scraps, infused arcane scraps, infused engineering scraps, infused weapon scraps, valuable weapon scraps, jewelry scraps 18/20ths. Amp says, XECR. I'm Zephyr says, WTV Chef's shirt DM. Bosco Jenkins says, didn't mean to spam that, sorry. Jun says, schematic, Organite combat schematic, Organite gauntlets WTS take all 20k. I wish the reset wasn't during my dinner time. I'm staring at my food now, waiting for me. Jiva says, Gorgon's earring fortifying toast, regenerating, despise GS 725 WTS. Lavlotter says, X mines. Alpersalam says, XECR. Bosco Jenkins says, heading to mines, R6820s. Dragon Bobby says, R. Sun Nadian says, XECRDC my PC. JJNX says, is there a next place? Beagles Carpathia says, that it. Keisha08 says, Smins. Aether JR says, X mines. Bosco Jenkins says, starting in 4 minutes, use the Alazer's recall portal R6920s. Sir Nathan says, she had a 6 hand. Sir Nathan says, XECR. Blaze Q says, XECR. Says, XECR. Sir Nathan says, XECR. Scarlett says, WTSX3 Major Harvesting Gathering Trophy take all 22K. TTV Staffer says, X up 16/20ths WTF. Bosco Jenkins says, starting in 2 minutes, mines. Len says, XECR. Sir Tech says, X mines. Tyla LE says, Major Loot Luck Trophy WTS GMO. Sir Garnet says, XECR. Rubble says, what? Says, Farmax Junkies drop infused armor scraps, infused jewelry scraps, infused arcane scraps, infused engineering scraps, infused weapon scraps, valuable weapon scraps, jewel scraps, 18/20ths. Panic 3 says, infused armor scraps, infused jewelry scraps, infused arcane scraps, infused engineering scraps, infused weapon scraps, valuable weapon scraps, jewelry scraps, 18. Sweaty Asta says, where is everyone? Chase M101 says, we started mine. Setsuna Mayu says, at the mine. Setsuna Mayu says, Shattered Mountain. Jojo Mo Jojo says, bad. Bosco Jenkins says, R6 mine 1620s, over 100 players here. Bosco Jenkins says, we just started. Sweaty Asta says, barely see anyone here. Paladin K says, any ECR room. Olympus Slayer says, X mine. Big Booty says, X mine. Abigail Adline says, X. Sam Gaming says, XER. Diane says, anyone help a quest please. Takiruk says, XECR. TTV Sapper said, mine 1920s. These drop infused armor scrap, infused jewelry scraps, infused arcane scraps, infused engineering scraps, valuable weapon scraps, jewelry scraps, 1920s. JJNX says, what's wall LOL? JJNX says, what map is that in? JJNX says, okay top. JJNX says, first BCR. Sashi says, Ken. Demon Hunter Looming says, kill instruments can also have perks. Demon Hunter Rumi says, I've been doing medley fair shit with the basic instruments LMAO. X says, YW. Sweaty Asta says, Bernanata soup. Orange Blue says, awesome. Peer pressure says, X-Wall. JJNX says, yeet. JJNX says, I'm walking LMAO. JJNX says, don't have that waypoint yet. YNS says, equals. Perfect one says.
Your friend! After all those years in that hole together, don't make me do this! Stay back! I won't tell you again! Forgive me.
Laser says, X Walla. Saison.exe says, XM.
Whoa, you! If you thought you were going to the mines, think again. If you have loved ones in there, I don't know what to tell you. Almost everyone's fallen lost and no support from Pridewind in sight.
Gorgon's earring fortifying toast.
Oh, so now she sends someone. And a stranger who's not even a knight. I sent dispatches informing the region of what happened, and I even said, send every knight available. Doesn't look like that's what's happening. For a while, some of the miners were holding out, fighting back with their picks against the teeth and claws of their now withered friends. At this point, it's probably a lost cause. I can't imagine that any of them are still standing. You're brave, I'll give you that. But we're not talking about a handful of withered. We're talking about the whole damn mine. Look for that stubborn Elias Derrick and anyone else who's not fallen, and then get them and yourself out of there quickly.
Cap copy says, XECR. Enzymski says, XECR.
You may not be a knight, but you've got courage. And if that translates into some of my miners getting out of there, I sure as hell won't complain.
Says, LF GORGEXP -2 heal /DPS to Renbot SNSDM link here /10. Mrs. Fudu says, Armor Matrix Prismatic Scarab WTS. Kyria Kanan says, XMYRK. Dollyman says, X Helio. Chase M101 says, we gon' have to skip to cast. NM. Bosco Jenkins says, ECR order again. Can't scroll up that far. The wall is almost over. Dollyman says, X Helio to join Helio. Get Syria Redby says, W. SVXSSS says, hey. Bosco Jenkins says, Helio. JJNX says, what map is that? Says, X Helio. Chase M101 says, almost done. Anjani Hall says, XECR. X Gunta says, X Helio. Hikaru Nagi says, Cas. Chase M101 says, no Helio. Chase M101 says, Cas. Bluesky says, it's a night. Sidalpha Sapphire says, Benz. Perfect One says, XECR. Bluesky says, Cast. Dollyman says, Cast. Anjani Ul says, Cast. Sir Garnet says, cast/helio/kep. Setsuna Mayu says, oops. Just Play One says, Scorp Live. Dollyman says, ready waiting cast when you are late join wall. Evervale says, export finisher. TTV Sapper says, cast, beds, go, Helio, LF still night, Kep, Atta, Imp, last aisle. Dice of Death 3ND says, go kill Goat Goblin. Perfect One says, XECR. Says, LF run GORGEXP-2 heal DM link gear. Chase M101 says, going fast, use worm sign obelisk. Loading. Please wait. Select character screen. Press X to continue. Select character screen. Press X to select Ryujin Kusanagi.